Ever scroll through like the comments on a game announcement and
Oh, yeah,
you're
yeah.
just baffled. Like, why are people freaking out about, a character's backstory or like
Right.
the setting of a game?
Yeah,
Today, we're diving deep into the psychology behind that very question.
good.
It's all about the anti-woke gamer backlash
Right.
and something called the victim complex.
And you'd be surprised how often this pops up.
Really?
It's less about disliking a game for its mechanics or, gameplay,
Right.
and more about this feeling some gamers have that their hobby,
Uh-huh.
something like deeply personal to them,
Yeah.
is under attack by inclusivity.
Okay, so right off the bat, anti-woke gamer. I've seen that phrase thrown around a lot.
Right.
Let's break it down.
Yeah.
What exactly are we talking about here? And why is it worth a whole deep dive?
You're right to ask for clarity.
Okay.
Because it's not about labeling anyone.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on the term anti-woke,
Yeah.
think of it as an umbrella
Okay.
for a certain mindset.
Okay.
Picture someone who pushes back hard against any changes they see as threatening to the gaming they're used to.
Okay.
Think diverse characters, storylines exploring different cultures or identities, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
And then we should care about this because...
Because it's everywhere.
Really?
This mindset doesn't just impact which games get made.
Wow.
We're talking online harassment campaigns.
Right.
Remember Gamergate?
Mm-hmm.
Review bombing on a massive scale like with The Last of Us Part 2,
Yeah.
and this constant narrative that diversity is somehow forced onto gamers, ruining their fun.
Gamergate. For those of us who need a refresher,
Sure.
what actually went down there?
In a nutshell, it was a coordinated online harassment campaign,
Okay.
disproportionately targeting women in the gaming industry.
Wow.
It really brought to light the darker side of this anti-woke pushback
Yeah.
and how much anger there was around making gaming more inclusive.
So we've got this term anti-woke gamer, this pushback against inclusivity.
Right.
But our source, the victim complex of the anti-woke gamer, takes it a step further.
Yeah.
It's not just disagreement,
Right.
it's this whole victimhood thing.
Right.
How does that work?
Imagine for a second that gaming has always been your escape, your
Okay.
safe space.
Okay.
You find comfort in the familiar tropes,
Mm-hmm.
the classic characters, the type of stories you're used to.
Oh, okay. I can see that I get comfy with my favorite genres of anything. Books, movies, you name it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now imagine that safe space feels threatened,
Yeah.
like it's changing into something unfamiliar.
Okay.
It's not that you hate every new game,
Right?
but there's a sense of loss,
Yeah.
a feeling of being pushed aside by these changes you didn't ask for.
And that's where the victim complex comes in?
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's this feeling of being personally attacked or persecuted
Yeah.
by these changes,
Yeah.
even if the changes are meant to make gaming more welcoming for everyone.
So it's less about, I hate this game because the story is bad.
Right.
And more like, this game is personally attacking me by existing.
It can feel that intense,
Yes. Wow.
which might seem utterly ridiculous from the outside, right?
Yeah.
But to understand it, we have to go back a bit.
Okay.
Look at how different gaming used to be.
Oh, okay.
Think back to the early days, stuff like Pac-Man Galaga, those old arcade classics.
Ah, simpler times.
Right.
What were games like back then
Yeah.
compared to the sprawling epics we have now?
Think simple narrative, straightforward goals.
Okay.
You weren't exploring complex characters or social issues.
Right.
You were just trying to beat the high score or save the princess.
Yeah.
And let's be real, the target audience was a much less diverse group than it is today.
Okay, so we've got a starting point.
Right.
Simple games, a less diverse audience.
Yeah.
When did things start to shift?
Yeah.
Was it a sudden explosion or a gradual evolution?
It's been more of a slow burn, really.
Yep.
As technology advanced,
Uh,
games became capable of telling more complex stories. We started seeing more nuanced characters,
Mhm.
deeper themes,
yeah.
and naturally more representation.
Right.
But this evolution for some gamers was deeply unsettling.
Which makes sense. Change is scary for a lot of people, especially when it's something you're really invested in.
It's true, and it's not inherently wrong to feel a pang of nostalgia for simpler times.
Right.
But where things get complicated is when that nostalgia morphs into a feeling of being threatened by change.
Yeah.
And that, my friend, is where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so we're back. Last time we talked about how gaming has evolved from those pixelated arcade classics to like the complex narratives we see today.
Right.
And how this shift ties into the anti-woke gamer backlash and this whole victim complex thing.
And remember, it's not about saying that anyone who feels nostalgic for older games is automatically part of the problem.
Right.
It's about understanding how that nostalgia
Yeah.
for some morphs into something more resistant to change.
You've used the phrase safe space a couple of times.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure.
What is it about gaming that makes it such a powerful space for people?
Think about it. Games offer a level of control and agency that you don't often find in real life.
Right.
You can be whoever you want, explore a different world, achieve incredible things.
Yeah.
For many, especially those who might feel marginalized or misunderstood in their everyday lives,
Right.
gaming provides an escape, a place to feel accepted and validated.
So when those games start changing, reflecting different experiences, different identities, some people feel like that safe space is shrinking.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the source, the victim complex of the anti-woke gamer, argues that this is where that sense of victimhood kicks in.
Okay.
It's the feeling that their space, their hobby, their very identity as a gamer is under attack,
Right.
even if that wasn't the intention.
You mentioned the word identity.
Yeah.
And I think that's a crucial point here. It's not just about liking or disliking a game.
Right.
It's about how closely people tie their identity to the games they play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about any dedicated community, sports fans, music lovers, you name it.
Right.
You bond over shared passions,
Yeah.
develop a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
For some gamers, especially those who've grown up with gaming,
Right.
it's become a core part of who they are.
So when they see these calls for more diversity, more representation in games, they feel like that representation is coming at the expense of their own identity.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
It's like they're looking at this evolving landscape and asking, where do I fit in now?
Right.
Is there still a place for me in this new world of gaming?
That's got to be a really unsettling feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the ground is shifting beneath you.
Yeah.
And our source argues that this is where those deeper psychological mechanisms come into play.
Right.
Fear, nostalgia, the need for validation.
And these are all completely human emotions.
Right.
It's natural to fear change, especially when it feels like it's happening without your consent or understanding.
Yeah.
Nostalgia offers that comforting escape, a longing for a time when things felt simpler, more familiar.
And validation.
Yeah.
How does that fit into the picture?
Think of it as seeking affirmation, that your experience, your preferences still matter.
Okay.
For some gamers, that validation comes from seeing themselves reflected in the games they play in the community they're a part of.
Right.
When those reflections start to change, they might feel invalidated, like their voices are being drowned out.
Which I imagine only reinforces that feeling of being under attack, feeding the victim complex.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
becomes a vicious cycle.
Right.
They feel threatened, so they push back, often aggressively,
Yeah.
which leads to more conflict, further alienating them from the evolving gaming landscape.
So we've got this fascinating, albeit complicated picture of the psychology at play here. But I have to ask, why should someone who's not caught up in the console wars or online gaming communities care about any of this?
Okay, so we've gone deep on like the psychology behind the anti-woke gamer backlash.
Yeah.
The feeling of a safe space under siege.
Right.
The fear of losing an important part of your identity.
Yeah.
Even this deep-seated need for validation in a changing landscape.
Right.
But where do we go from here?
Sure.
You can't just magically erase these feelings.
You're absolutely right. You can't just snap your fingers and expect everyone to suddenly embrace change.
Right.
Especially when it comes to something as like personal and passion-driven as gaming.
Right.
But that's also why this conversation is so important.
So where do we even begin?
Yeah.
Our source, the victim complex of the anti-woke gamer, talks about the need for dialogue,
Right.
for understanding.
Yeah.
But honestly, is that even realistic in the gaming world, which can feel pretty aggressive,
Yeah.
especially online?
It's definitely a challenge,
Yeah.
especially when you've got folks on both sides feeling incredibly passionate,
Right.
sometimes to the point of anger.
Right.
But it has to start with recognizing that inclusivity isn't about taking something away from one group to give to another.
Right.
It's about expanding the world of gaming so that everyone feels welcome to participate, to see themselves reflected in the stories being told.
Which is a great goal.
Yeah.
But how do we actually get there?
Part of it falls on game developers.
Okay.
They have a responsibility to not only create diverse and inclusive games,
Wow.
but also to be open about their creative process,
Okay.
their reasons for choosing certain characters or storylines. Right.
Transparency can go a long way in building trust and understanding.
Makes sense. If you can at least understand the why behind a creative decision.
Right.
It's harder to feel like it's a personal attack.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just on the developers.
Yeah.
Gaming platforms, the companies that host these online communities,
Yeah.
they have a huge role to play in moderating toxic behavior,
Right.
making it clear that harassment and bullying won't be tolerated.
Because right now, let's be honest, those spaces can be incredibly discouraging.
Oh, yeah.
For anyone who doesn't fit the very narrow mold of what a gamer is supposed to be.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
We need to broaden our definition of what a gamer looks like.
Right.
What kinds of stories they want to experience.
Right.
And that means creating spaces where everyone feels safe to speak up, to share their perspectives even.
Yeah.
And this is crucial,
Yeah.
when they disagree.
Easier said than done right.
It is.
Especially in the heat of the moment when passions are running high.
It takes conscious effort from everyone.
Yeah.
For those who might be feeling left behind by the changes happening in gaming,
Yeah.
it's okay to acknowledge those feelings of loss,
Sure.
of confusion, even of anger.
Yeah.
But clinging to that anger, allowing it to manifest as aggression or exclusionary behavior,
Right.
that's what ultimately harms everyone, including yourself.
Our source argues that by trying to save gaming,
Yeah.
to keep it frozen in a certain image,
Right.
these gamers might actually be contributing to its downfall.
And it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
The more you resist change, the more you isolate yourself from the evolving landscape of gaming.
Right.
You end up stuck in a shrinking corner while the rest of the world moves on, embraces new ideas, new voices, new ways of experiencing something we all claim to love.
So if we were to paint a picture of a healthier, more inclusive future for gaming,
Sure.
well, what would that look like?
Imagine a gaming world that reflects the incredible diversity we see in the real world.
Oh, okay.
Games with characters from all walks of life,
Yeah.
with stories that explore a multitude of experiences and perspectives,
Right.
a gaming community where everyone feels welcome, where disagreements are navigated with respect and understanding,
Yeah.
and where the joy of play, the shared love of the game, is the ultimate common ground.
That's a vision I can get behind. But as we wrap up, I'm left with this thought.
Yeah.
This isn't just a gaming issue, is it?
It's not. No.
This fear of change, the feeling of being replaced with the need to cling to a certain version of the world,
Right.
that feels pretty universal, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We see these same dynamics playing out in every aspect of society.
Right.
But just like in gaming, it all comes down to choosing empathy over division, understanding over judgment.
Powerful stuff. So as we wrap up this deep dive, a final thought to leave you with.
Okay.
Next time you encounter this resistance to change, this fear of the unfamiliar,
Yeah.
whether it's in the gaming world or in your own backyard,
Right.
remember that behind every strongly held belief is a complex human story.
Absolutely.
A story shaped by experiences, by fears, by a deep-seated longing to belong. Take a moment to understand that story before you rush to judgment.
Right.
Who knows, you might find common ground in the most unexpected places.
It's true.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, game on!